Hi, I'm Kate with New Trees Education. We're here today to avoid some silly mistakes and some stressful mistakes that many of my students make on the SAT, especially in the math side. So let's go over some of the best tools and tricks of the trade to prevent these errors. So first is be able to read your own writing. Some commonly confused symbols include the number 2 and the letter Z. Sometimes Z is used as a variable, and so if you have 2 times Z and you just put them together, somehow that becomes 22. And you run with that and you lose your variable and it gets very confusing. So instead, the number 2 you can write with a bubble in the bottom of the 2 to kind of make it look less like a Z. And the letter Z you can write with a hash, a horizontal hash that goes in between the Z so that it's definitely not a 2. The number 5 and the letter S. The SAT loves using the variable s in the geometry sections. And so what I suggest is you use a lowercase s that allows you, and a cursive lowercase s, so that you can tell the difference between your 5 and your s. We also want to do a difference between 1 and 7. The little hat on a 7 can sometimes be a little short, and some of my students read their own handwriting and think it's a 1. Just like we did with the Z, many 7s, you can make that dash or hash horizontally, and that'll prevent any confusion. Then there's the letter X. It can sometimes mean a variable and sometimes mean multiplication. So I suggest that you always use X as a variable only and do not use it to indicate multiplication. Instead, put things in parentheses, like open parenthesis 2, close parenthesis, open parenthesis 5, close parenthesis, means 2 times 5. Also the degree symbol and the number 0. Sometimes I've had students that have something like 49 degrees Fahrenheit, and sometimes that degree symbol gets a little bigger, and then all of a sudden their problem they're working with is 490 Fahrenheit. Not only is that pretty hot, but it's also not going to lead you to a correct answer. The last one I have here has to do with putting a 0 in front of a decimal. This allows you to remember that the decimal is actually there when you put the 0 in front. I suggest you leave the 0 there, as in the 0.04, versus leaving it off. The next suggestion I have is to read the problem with your pencil. This means I want you to scribble all over it. Underline what is probably important, circle what is confusing, and box what the problem is looking for. So let's try this out with one example problem. Here's the example we have. We have a diagram, and then it says the 2 semicircles in the figure above. Semicircles. That means I'm not dealing with whole circles. That's important, so I'm going to underline it. The figure above have centers R and S respectively. That's also important. Those are my 2 semicircles, R and S. That's how we title them. Then it also gives me that the distance between R and S is 12, which is also important. Now the question asks, what is the total length of the darkened curve? Now remember, we want to box in what the problem is looking for. And it's really important to do that because the SAT likes to ask questions that you think you're going to know what they're asking, but then they put in that little twist at the end. So what are we looking for here? Absolutely, the length of the darkened curve. Okay, we're going to keep working with this problem, but let's see what's next. Oh, we also want to annotate the number 12 as the distance between R and S. Especially in geometry problems, we want to be able to draw on top of the problem. You will be able to draw on your booklet on the SAT, and I highly recommend it. So now let's talk about the roadmap. This is how we identify what the problem gives us and where we need to go, just like if you were giving directions to someone driving. So when we roadmap a problem, we often have to figure out the steps in between. Do we need to change units? Are we going from feet to inches? Things like that. Do we need a measurement that we aren't given? In particularly geometry, there's often a measurement that we want that we're not given that we need to find first. Sometimes we even have to look for the triangles to find that measurement. And then finally, do you have the equation? Now, remember, you don't have to memorize every single equation for the SAT. All of these equations are on your equation sheet at the beginning of section 3 or section 4. So let's go back to our problem. We have these two semicircles and we want the length of that darkened curve. How do we find the length of that darkened curve? What type of equation might we need? You're right, the circumference. So the circumference equation of a circle will tell us what part of that curve we need. So we go and pull from the equation sheet, the circumference equals 2 pi r. Finally, we have no mental math. Math can only be done in the calculator, like you're physically typing it into your calculator or written down. Our minds are not designed to hold all of this information and stress at the same time. Most students cannot hold, since they can't hold that information, what I tell them to do is to write everything down. Now, when you write it down the first time, right, you may say, oh my gosh, but this is taking so much time and I'll never get all of the questions answered. Well, if you answer all the questions incorrectly, you're never going to get points for them anyway. So it's better to leave a couple questions at the end that you have to guess on versus having all of these questions that you go really, really quick but never get the right answer. So when you're writing it down, make sure to use your space wisely. Start at the top of the problem and work your way down. Again, you have the booklet to write in. So going back to our example, we have our equation that c equals 2 pi r. What do we need to do first now? What kind of things are we going to write down? Okay, good. So here we make the assumption that the radius of circle r is 5. That means that the radius of circle s has to be 12, that whole distance there, minus 5, which equals 7. Okay, and again, you write every single one of these steps down. So the equation of a semicircle, because we only have half a circle to deal with, and we underline the word semicircle, so we have to do something with that. It's an important piece of information, is 1/2 2 pi r, which just reduces down to pi times r. Now we have two semicircles, so I have pi times 5 plus pi times 7, 5 pi plus 7 pi, 12 pi. And if you look, that's our answer, C. Look at all this math that I wrote out. You write out all of the math and then you won't skip steps. Fantastic. The last suggestion that I have here is study as you test. Practice these skills. Write with the same pencil. What type of pencil do you have to use for the SAT? Can you use a mechanical pencil? All of these are good questions. You have to use a number 2 pencil. Use the same calculator, because some calculators you have to put things in first, or the parentheses matter. It's important that you know your calculator. And don't let the test day be the first day that you start writing all over a problem or annotating. And the reason at that is you will get faster and faster and faster the more times you do it. Practice this. Practice just like you were testing. Thank you for watching. The 5 steps that we went over today was being able to read your own writing, read the problem with your pencil, write it out, the roadmap, figure out what you need to get there, no mental math, write it all down, or in your calculator, and study as you would test. I'm Kate from New Trees Education. You can check out our website for more information, and we have tutors available for SAT tutoring online and in person in the Arlington, Texas area. Thank you very much.